Lord Kaler had ended 12 civilizations. He knew what fear looked like. He had seen it rise from planets like smoke, heard it in fractured signals and trembling voices, watched entire worlds collapse the moment his fleet darkened their sky. It always followed the same pattern. First came panic, then threats, then silence, then surrender. So when his fleet reached Earth, he expected nothing different. From the command deck of his flagship, Kaler stood with his hands clasped behind his back and looked down at the planet below. Blue, white, brown, full. Ordinary. A quiet world turning under a quiet star. 42 warships held position around him. Their shadows stretched across Earth's night side like a second sky, weapons charged, shields active, every system ready. A display of power that had broken empires. But Earth did not react. No emergency signals. No desperate military launches. No wild, scrambled broadcasts. Instead, one message came through. Clear, direct. Welcome to Earth. Your meeting is ready. Kaler read it twice. Then once more. He did not like it. Beside him, his aides spoke carefully. No panic signals detected, my lord. Below them, the planet moved as if nothing had changed. Cities still glowed. Ships still drifted in orbit. Life continued, as if 42 warships were not watching from above. That was wrong. That was very wrong. 3 hours later, the human shuttle arrived. Unarmed. Slow. It did not rush or hesitate. It simply followed the transmitted path and docked with the flagship as though it had done so 100 times before. Kaler stood at the center of the receiving hall, a space designed for exactly this kind of moment. High ceiling, cold light, a polished black floor that reflected everything. Rows of officers stood silent behind him, every detail engineered to make visitors feel small, to remind them who held power. The docking door opened. 7 humans walked in. They did not stop. They did not look around in awe or fear. They walked forward at a steady, unhurried pace, like people with nowhere urgent to be. At the front was their leader, General Elias Ward. The file said 64 years old. Former battlefield surgeon. Now head of Earth's Defense Council. The file had included an image. The real man was different. He looked still, not weak, not loudly strong, but weathered in a way that suggested he had stopped being surprised by difficult things a long time ago. He walked forward and stopped a few paces from Kaler. A moment of silence passed. Then Ward gave a single nod. "Thank you for receiving us," he said. His voice was quiet, not soft, not weak, simply calm, the voice of someone who did not need volume to be heard. Kaler studied him. Ward reached into his coat. Several guards shifted instinctively. Then he withdrew a small object, an old steel flask, scratched and worn from years of use, and placed it gently on the long table between them, right beside Kaler's precision instruments. The contrast was strange. Ancient metal beside perfect technology. Kaler looked at it without speaking. "Shall we begin?" Ward asked. No speech. No ceremony. No sign that this meeting might decide the fate of his world. Kaler gave a small gesture. The meeting began. The first hour went as expected. Kaler spoke. He outlined the reach of his empire, the strength of its fleets, the number of worlds under its control. He stated the terms of surrender. It was a speech he had delivered many times, and he knew precisely where different species tended to break, where voices faltered, where fear surfaced. The humans did not react. They listened. Ward sat with his hands resting calmly on the table, occasionally writing notes in a small paper pad with an actual pen. Actual ink. Another strange detail. Across from him, one of the human officers glanced briefly at a device on her wrist, not urgently, just a quick check, then returned to stillness. Kaler noticed everything. When the speech ended, silence filled the room. Kaler waited. This was the moment, when a species grasped the full weight of what was above it. The humans did not look overwhelmed. They did not whisper among themselves or shift nervously in their seats. They simply sat, waiting. Ward clicked his pen once. "Thank you," he said. That was clear. No emotion. No resistance. No fear. Something shifted inside Kaler. A small, uncomfortable feeling he could not immediately name. Ward opened his notebook. "We have a few questions," he said. And then something changed. The humans negotiated without begging, without protesting, without raising their voices. They accepted minor details, communication channels, meeting schedules, protocol rules, without complaint. But when they disagreed, they stated it plainly. "That condition does not work for us." No explanation. No anger. Just calm refusal, followed by silence. Kaler had negotiated with dozens of species. He recognized panic, desperation, false confidence. This was none of those things. This was something controlled. Something prepared. 2 hours passed, then 3. And the small details kept accumulating. The wrist device, the notebook, the old flask, the absence of fear. Each one was nothing by itself. Together, they did not fit. At one point, Ward mentioned something in passing. "We'll also need to review how these terms affect Earth's outer defense range." Kaler noted the phrase but said nothing. He assumed it referred to orbital platforms. Minor infrastructure. Still, it was the way Ward said it. As though it mattered. The meeting adjourned for the day. The humans stood, collected their things. Ward picked up his flask, gave a small nod. "We'll continue tomorrow," he said. Then they left. Kaler remained in the empty hall for a long moment. Then he turned slowly toward the viewing window. Earth floated below. Unchanged. Alive, as if nothing above it mattered. Behind him, one of his officers spoke quietly. "My lord, should we prepare for resistance?" Kaler did not answer immediately. He watched the planet. "No," he said finally. "They do not look like a species preparing to fight." The pause. "They look like a species that is not afraid." That night, Kaler reviewed the intelligence again. Human military strength. Modest, limited, contained within their system. Nothing that could challenge 42 warships. Everything made sense, and yet something felt wrong. Far out in the outer system, his sensors had recorded several faint signals. Unclear, unstable, dismissed as interference. Kaler stared at those reports for a long time. The positions were not random, they were too evenly spaced. Almost deliberate. He closed the file. He told himself what he had told himself for centuries. It always goes the same way. But as he looked once more at the quiet planet below, he felt something unfamiliar. Something small and cold, settling at the edge of his certainty. For the first time in 300 years, Lord Kaler was not completely sure. Day 2 began too quietly. Kaler arrived at the negotiation chamber early, as he always did. Whoever controlled the room before the other side entered already held an advantage. He sat. His officers arranged themselves behind him in perfect formation. The hall was still. The humans arrived 4 minutes later. Not late. Not early. General Ward walked in at the same steady pace, same unreadable expression. He sat, placed his flask on the table, opened his notebook, and clicked his pen. "Good morning," he said, and meant it. The subject today was control, specifically jurisdiction over Earth's surrounding space. Kaler outlined the standard terms. Outer regions would fall under imperial law. Inner regions would remain under local authority. Military activity would be restricted. Defense would be handled by the empire. This was always the hardest moment. Younger civilizations clung fiercely to their sky, to the space they considered their own. Ward did not react that way. He listened. Then he spoke. "We'll need to adjust the boundary near the outer system," he said. "On what basis?" Kaler asked. Ward turned a page. "Precedent." He cited a case from another system, a technical point buried in imperial law. He was right. Kaler's legal officer confirmed it. The boundary was adjusted. Ward wrote something down and moved on. No triumph. No show of satisfaction. Just progress. As the hours passed, a pattern emerged. The humans conceded easily on small things, irrelevant clauses, minor protocols. But on certain points they were immovable. "That condition does not work for us." Same tone. Same patient silence afterward. And the phrase appeared again, "Earth's outer defense range." Second time. "You refer to your orbital stations?" Kaler asked. Ward looked at him. No. Then he continued reading. Kaler did not press. But he did not forget. Across the table, the Admiral glanced at her wrist device, briefly, at regular intervals, always with the same calm. As if she were waiting for something specific. Something she already knew was coming. That night, Kaler pulled the full intelligence archive. 30 years of observation. Satellite scans. Communication intercepts. Everything. The summary was unchanged. Orbital defense platforms, patrol ships, limited deep space capability. Nothing unusual. Nothing threatening. Nothing that explained their behavior. He pulled up long-range scan data from the outer system. 7 anomalies. Small, faint, unstable. Each one flagged the same way. Low confidence. Likely interference. Their positions were too even. His aide entered quietly. My lord, I've been reviewing those signals. And? They're not behaving like interference. The readings are consistent. Fixed in position. She paused. Like objects. Mass estimates? The system can't calculate them accurately. That happens with interference. Yes, she said. Then carefully, but not like this. Silence. Kaler stood and walked to the window. Earth floated below, half lit, half in shadow. Continue monitoring, he said. No active scans. She left. Kaler stood alone, looking down at the planet that refused to be afraid. Day 3. The humans arrived the same way. Same pace, same calm, same flask, same notebook. The day's agenda was dense. Legal systems, jurisdictional lines, 17 separate clauses. The humans pushed back on 3, 1, 2, accepted 1. Precise and unhurried. Midway through the session, Ward spoke again, almost as an afterthought. We'll also need to address how these terms affect our defensive fleet operations in the outer system. Kaler set down his pen. Third time. Your defensive fleet, he said slowly. Ward nodded. Yes. Our data shows your forces are limited to local patrol vessels. Ward looked at him. 3 seconds of silence passed. That data, he said, shows what it was allowed to show. The cold feeling returned, sharper now, more specific. Kaler did not respond. But across the table, the Admiral had glanced at her wrist device again. This time, something shifted behind her eyes, not surprise. Recognition. She looked once at Ward. Ward did not look back. But his pen stopped moving. For exactly 4 seconds. Then continued. Kaler's attention narrowed to a point. Something was happening. And he was not in control of it. Minutes passed. The meeting continued, surfaces intact. Then the Admiral's device pulsed again. This time she didn't conceal the glance. She looked down, then said quietly, to no one in particular. Right on time. At that exact moment, every system on the ship activated at once. Not an alert. Not a warning. Something worse. Confusion. Reports flooded in from every ship in the fleet. Sensors were detecting something. Something massive. Something new. Location, outer system. Exactly where the anomalies had been. Unidentified object. Mass reading unstable. Unable to classify. Size exceeds known categories. His fleet analyst sent a direct message, voice unsteady. My lord. We cannot measure it. Kaler looked up slowly. Across the table, General Ward was not looking at his device, not reacting to any of it. He was simply watching Kaler. Patient. Certain. And in that moment, Kaler understood. This meeting had never been about surrender. The room stayed silent. Outside it, everything had changed. Reports continued to arrive. The same impossible numbers, the same failure of instruments to make sense of what they were recording. Object has exited fold space. Mass reading unstable. Recalculating. 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 Each estimate higher than the last. Each one less certain than before. Confidence level, 12%. And even at that uncertainty, the lowest estimate was already beyond anything Kaler had encountered in 3 centuries of conquest. He lifted his head slowly. General Ward was pouring coffee from the steel flask into a small cup. The motion was perfectly steady. Not a drop spilled. Kaler stared at him. "You knew," he said. "Yes." "What is it?" Ward set the cup down. "Our answer." A new report came through, visual sensors. Object entering visible range. Kaler stood without asking permission and walked to the observation window. The stars stretched across the darkness, unchanged. Then something moved at the edge of perception. A distortion, a shadow too large for the mind to parse cleanly. And then the shape came together. Slowly. Piece by piece. It was not a ship. Not in any sense Kaler had a word for. It was a structure, a moving architecture, a mountain of layered metal drifting through space. Individual sections of it were the size of his flagship. And those sections were components of something exponentially larger. Depth upon depth, layer behind layer, each lit by thousands of running lights that served only to make the scale legible. It moved forward at an unhurried pace. Not threatening. Not adjusting course. It did not need to. Kaler's fleet, 42 warships, looked like debris floating in its path. A message came through from his tactical officer, voice not quite steady. "My lord, it's tracking us. No weapons lock detected. It is observing us." Kaler closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, the ship was still there. Still growing larger. He walked back to the table and sat. "What is its designation?" he asked. "Nous Resolute," Ward said. Kaler repeated it quietly. "Resolute. She is one of ours." "One?" Kaler asked. Ward held his gaze. "Yes." The word landed with unexpected weight. "How many?" Kaler asked. Ward paused, not to think, but to consider how much to say. "Enough," he replied. Silence settled over the room. "You built this in secret," Kaler said. "Yes." "For how long?" 18 years. "You knew we were coming." "Yes." Kaler studied him. "And you prepared?" Ward shook his head slightly. "Not for you specifically." He paused. "We prepared for anyone. That was worse. Much worse." Ward continued, his voice unchanged. "We studied our history. All of it." A brief glance down at the notebook, the simple paper. "We spent 10,000 years at war with ourselves. We learned what conflict costs. We learned how civilizations collapse from the inside before anything touches them from the outside." He looked back up. "And we decided that if something ever came from the stars, we would not meet it from a position of weakness. We would only have one chance to establish what we were." The words settled in the room like weight. Kaler looked toward the window. The massive ship had stopped. It simply held position, watching, waiting, requiring nothing. "You brought it here as a threat," Kaler said. "No." Ward's tone was patient. "We brought it so there would be no confusion." Kaler understood. Completely. This was not a threat. It was a statement. "We are not weak. We are not afraid. We have been ready for longer than you know." He looked down at the table, at the steel flask, the worn notebook, the man across from him, and asked the only question left. "What do you want?" Ward answered without hesitation. "Respect." One word. No speech. No demand attached to it. Kaler exhaled slowly. For centuries he had operated by a simple belief that power decided everything, that strength created order, that smaller civilizations joined larger ones because they had no other choice. It was a logic the universe had confirmed again and again. But this was something he hadn't accounted for. A species that had fought itself to the edge of extinction and learned from it. That had spent decades building in silence rather than broadcasting defiance. That had walked into his receiving hall not with bravado, but with the quiet confidence of people who had already decided what they were, long before anyone came to test them. Kaler reached forward and picked up the agreement document on the table. "This assumes your submission," he said. "It does," Ward agreed. Kaler set it down. "That won't happen." "No," Ward said. "It won't." A silence settled between them, but this one felt different. Not tense. Balanced. "What do you propose?" Kaler asked. Ward closed his notebook and set his pen beside it. "Partnership, he said. Kaler considered the word. Not surrender. Not a hierarchy dressed in polite language. Partnership. He looked once more toward the window. The Resolute held its place in the outer dark, not threatening, simply present. Proof. A declaration made in steel and silence rather than words. Then he nodded. Very well, he said. Ward gave a small nod in return. No smile. No triumph. Just agreement. The meeting continued. But now everything was different. Outside, the Resolute held its position, watching. Not as a weapon. As evidence. Evidence that humanity had already decided who they were, and what they were worth, long before anyone arrived to ask.